Sawete omnes. Et bene advenistis. This is lecture 33, that is, Acroasis XXXIII, de pronomine intensivo, on the intensive pronoun. Now we're going to start with a review, as always. Recognitio de pronominibus reflexivis. The reflexive pronoun, as you'll recall, is a pronoun that is used to refer back to the subject when the subject is doing an action to or for itself. De viro isto malo me servavi. From that wicked man I saved myself. Now, I know that me must be myself because I look at the verb and I see that I ending, that first person singular ending, indicating that I am doing the action, and then I also see me in the accusative case, indicating that I am the recipient of the action. De viro isto malo me servavi. With this, as with all examples, please write it down in your notes, along with any explanatory information such as a translation. You may pause the video as necessary. Looking at that same sentence, let's change that up a little bit and talk about someone else. De viro isto malo te servavisti. Well, you did a good job. From that wicked man, you saved yourself. Please notice I'm only talking to one of you. Te servavisti. Notice that me and te look just like the regular forms of the pronouns. Now, if I'm not talking about myself, and I'm not talking to you about what you have done, but we're talking about someone else, I use the third person reflexive pronoun. De viro isto malo se servavit. From that wicked man, he saved himself, or she saved herself, or it saved itself. Without broader context, we don't know. Now keep in mind that that third person pronoun not only can refer to an antecedent of either the masculine, feminine, or neuter gender, but also to a plural antecedent, such as in this sentence, de viro isto malo, from that wicked man, se servaverunt, they saved themselves.
You busybodies have busied your last body.
Yes, our quick-witted heroes had switched suitcases, vanished from the scene, and at that moment were zooming toward town on Boris's own handcar.
Today we're going to introduce the pronomen intensivum, the intensive pronoun. Now, the intensive pronoun is a little tricky for speakers of English because we have an unfortunate situation in our language that our intensive pronoun sounds identical to our reflexive pronoun, and only context can help. Latin does not have that issue. Now, from your vocabulary, you already know the intensive pronoun, ipse, ipsa, ipsum. Today, the first three slides, we're going to go ahead and practice the declension of this. For the masculine, I'm going to go through it with you and then ask you to pause the video and to write this down in your paper. For the others, we'll quiz ourselves. So let's go ahead and look at that form. Alright, so we've set up our chart. I want you to take a moment to set that up on your own paper. I'll be looking for this in your notes tomorrow. Let's go through this. Now, this is a pronoun declension, so that nominative, genitive, and dative singular are going to look a little strange. So we have, or strange to us, because we're just learning Latin. We have ipse, and then for the genitive, ipsius, and then for the dative, ipsi. But for the masculine forms, the rest will look like second declension, which you know very well at this point. So we continue ipsum, ipso, ipsi, ipsorum, ipsis, ipsos, ipsis. Please pause the video as necessary to write this down in your notes and label it very clearly, as I have on the screen, masculinum, the masculine form. Now, let's take a moment to think about what we know about the pronoun declension. The only irregularities in the pronoun declension are the genitive and dative singular, ius and e. All of the other forms will look like first or second declension based on the gender. So let's move on to the feminine forms. The pronomen intensivum femininum, the feminine intensive pronoun, will have that same genitive and dative singular and ipsius, ipsi, but all the rest of the forms will look like first declension. So we have ipsa, ipsius, ipsi. At this point, I'm going to ask you to pause the video and fill up the rest of the declension. When you have finished writing that in, turn the video back on and say the forms with me. All right, so we're going to start from the beginning. So we have ipsa, ipsius, ipsi, ipsam, ipsa, notice the macron, ipsae, ipsarum, ipsis, ipsas, ipsis. I hope you got that all correct. Let's move on. All right, now we have the pronomen intensivum neutrum, the neuter intensive pronoun. Again, this is going to follow the rules you already know. So let's go ahead and set this up. We have our nominative ipsum, and I'm going to stop right here. At this point, pause the video and write the declension out as you have learned it up to this point. When you finish writing it out, resume the video and we'll check our work together. All right, so let's go ahead, start that from the beginning. Ipsum, ipsius, ipsi, ipsum, ipso, ipsa, ipsorum, ipsis, ipsa, ipsis. I hope you have all those forms correct. If not, go back, review your pronoun declension, but also just review your second declension because with the exception of genitive and dative singular, this follows the standard the standard form for the second declension neuter. Okay, now let's go ahead and apply the intensive pronoun with non nullae sententiae, with a few sentences. Si ad patria meam veneris me ipsum vincere debebis. Go ahead and read that with me. Si ad patria meam veneris me ipsum vincere debebis. All right, take a moment, write that down on your paper, and translate it in your notes, and we'll check our work in just a moment. All right, so, si ad patria meam veneris, if you will have come to my fatherland, you will have to defeat me myself. You should defeat me myself. Now, notice that the me ipsum, the me agrees with the ipsum. All I'm doing with that ipse is I'm simply intensifying that form of me. That ipsum is simply standing next to it. So the me ipsum, it's just giving a little bit of volume to it. I could have just said me, but this really means I'm a big deal. You'll have to defeat me. All right, let's go ahead and look at our next example. Vos ipsae eum vidistis. All right, read that with me. Vos ipsae eum vidistis. All right, go ahead, pause the video and translate that on your own paper. All right, did you write, you yourselves have seen him? You yourselves have seen him. If you did, you are correct. Now let's also take a moment to look at that form. Now vos, when we look at vos, I cannot tell from that form alone the gender of the addressee. Vos by itself could be masculine, feminine, or neuter, but notice that the intensive pronoun does reflect gender. So when I say vos ipsae, you yourselves, I can only be referring to a group of females. So you yourselves saw him. So notice that that intensive pronoun can show us gender very clearly. Now the last one's a little bit harder, so you may need a little bit more time for that, but give yourself that extra effort. So I'll read it first, and then I'll ask you to read it with me. Dona suis sibi ipsis dederunt, non mihi. All right, read it with me. Dona suis sibi ipsis dederunt, non mihi. All right, go ahead, pause the video, write down your translation, and then resume the video, and we'll check our work. So, Dona suis sibi ipsis dederunt. They have given, dona sua, their gifts to themselves, to they themselves, to them themselves. They have given the gifts. They have given their gifts to themselves, not to me. Now, here's a point to notice. Sibi. is already reflexive. All that ipsis is doing is really giving emphasis. And you'll notice that it's really hard to work that into the translation literally. So this is a bit of a trick question. The ipsis is just emphasizing they gave their gifts to themselves as opposed to me. They didn't give them to me. And that gets into a bigger question of what we're doing with language. It's not always just a point of translation where we go one word equals another word, but that certain words have context within the language itself. And ipsa is one of those. It really just adds emphasis. It's like adding a bold mark or underlining something. Or, as you heard me say, they gave the gifts to themselves, not to me. It's really showing that. And sometimes we can't communicate these things directly, but it's good to be aware of them. All right, I'm going to put the link for your homework up on the screen. Fill out that Google form. I will look forward to seeing the hard work you've put into your notes, and I shall see you tomorrow while I bet on this.